Hi and welcome back. In our last lesson we looked at the form wizard and we created a simple form with what I would consider some basic functionality. We could do navigation and we could do stuff such as adding a new record, editing a record, deleting a record. There were functionality to do searches or rather filters, and in fact I'll just execute that form just for a quick review. So to execute a form, didn't show that last time, we used the do command, do form, and it was my form 1, and this was the form we created. The wizard generated all of this for us, the navigational buttons, which allowed us to scroll through the data one record at a time. We could add a blank record, we could undo, we could do edits, we could make changes, we could undo those changes as well, we could delete. There's no undelete in this form, and of course we can exit the form. So what we're going to look at today is how to create a similar form from scratch. We're going to look at working with a form's data environment. That is how we set up the data environment to automatically open and close our table. And of course, we're going to be adding some base functionality to our form. We'll be doing some navigation. We'll be adding some navigational buttons, top, next, previous, bottom, and we'll do add, edit, and delete and exit as well. For find, I'm going to just simply do a browse for now, just to keep the video fairly simple. Later on, we'll look perhaps at an example of an advanced find screen, okay, and how to call that. Okay, so let's get started. And to create a form, excuse me, of course we could do it from the menu. We can do most stuff from the menu. You can new, and you go form and new file, but I prefer to type my commands, so it's create form, and we call this one my form 2. And again, the form designer open, or rather I should say the form designer opens. We didn't look at this in the earlier lesson, so this is the form designer, and with it we get this form control toolbar. Traditionally it's up here. Let's drag this up. Traditionally it's there, but of course you could dock it wherever you wanted to. And here of course we have our property sheet, which we saw in the VFB interface lesson, and this works for forms as well as for screens when we have the screen active. Okay, so what we're going to do is to specify the table that we want to work with our form. Right now I could run this form and I would just have a plain old form. There's a caption there. We have these buttons. I can maximize, I can minimize, I can restore. Of course I can close, and I can also resize the form. So all this is free. Of course I can move it around, and as you notice that the form is contained within the Visual FoxPro desktop. Okay, we could make it a top-level form in which it would be able to float outside of the Visual FoxPro desktop, but we'll look at that in another lesson. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this and add some customization to it. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and open our table, and again I forgot to set my working folder, so let's do that. Set default to C lesson 2. Go back here, open, select the My Table 1. And in fact, I didn't even have to do this. Let me close this and then close here. All that can be done from the data environment screen. So, two ways to open the data environment for a form. We can go View, data environment, or which I traditionally do, is to right mouse click on the form and select data environment. And right away it brings up, because there are no tables open, it goes straight to the open dialog for me to specify my free table, because I don't have a database open right now. So there's no database open, and I specified a free table. So we'll go ahead and close. The table is shown here. This is our data environment window. And of course, the table that is added to the data environment is treated as a cursor. We'll get more into cursors later, and there are properties here that we can set. There are methods that we can add code to get some customized behavior, and I'll not get into that right now. So what we want to do quickly is to do what the wizard did for us by ourselves, okay, from scratch. So I'm going to take these fields and drag them to the form. Now I want to show you, need a little trick here. Now if I wanted a grid, which looks sort of like a browse window on my form, I could simply drag the table on, and I would get a grid here, and I'll just run the form with this, and so you'll see what happens. All my data is displayed there. These two are deleted records. This small column here is the deleted flag column, and it is showing that I have 2 records deleted, but I don't have the filter turned on to not show deleted records, and we'll look at that in a little bit. So this is all my data, just as you saw me do with the browse window. So we can add a grid to a form, which is pretty cool. In the old days, we had to do a lot of trickery with the browse window just to get a grid to appear as if it was on a form. Okay, so let's close this out. But this is not what we want. I don't want a grid, so I'll delete that. Let's get the data environment window open. And something to note as well, if I wanted to, even if I selected specific fields from the table and drag them, that is left click and drag, I still get a grid, right? But with only the columns I specified, of course, first name, last name, city, zip. So to be sure that I get, and let's make this a little wider here. So what I'm going to do is to select all my fields, and then I'm right mouse clicking on it, and I drag to the form, and I should get a pop-up menu asking me what I want to do. And so I could create a grid here, which is preferably or easily done by just dragging with the left mouse, or I can create multiple controls here, which is the behavior I want. Okay, so here I have a form layout for me very quickly done. The labels here to the left are the exact names of my fields, and I'm going to spend some time and format those. So I'm going to drag these over a little bit to the right. Okay, I'm going to change first name. We work with the caption property. If you're a VB.NET developer, C#, if were working in VB6 before, you'd be working with the text property. A little different in FoxPro, and can be a bit confusing at times, because there are times when, depending on the control, we use text or value, but for labels we use the caption property. Okay, so we're going to modify this. Say first name, and I'm going to tell it to auto resize. Now it is auto resize, it's true, and perhaps the wraparound property is also true. Word wrap, I don't want this, so I'll double click to set it to false, and that should be fine. So I'm going to select all of these at once and make sure word wrap is off. Okay, so let's go to last name. I go to the caption property, and I edit here. And because auto size is true, notice that my label automatically resizes. Colon on that. And these are fine as they are. this is just cosmetics. Okay. Now these are text boxes, and they're all automatically bound to the proper column from my table. And that's one of the beauty of dragging from the table, from the data environment, because then we get all the wiring done for us automatically. Now, if we had to do the wiring manually, we would say drag a regular text box on a form, and then we would need to go to the Data tab and select the control source and specify the table. Now, once we have a table in the data environment, when we click in this drop down, we'll get a list of fields to choose from. So that's pretty neat as well. We don't need to remember the spelling of the name. Okay, so we delete that, and if we go through and look at all these, we see that the control source is set to the respective columns. My table 1.fname maximum length, which is a maximum length of the field in the table. I'm just going to click through here and watch the control source as I click and go through. So each is automatically wired up with the maximum length. By specifying the maximum length, that will tell Visual FoxPro, or actually aid in data entry. So we won't be able to enter more than 2 characters for the state. Okay, so date of birth and likes coffee. Let's change the text on this one. We just do a little bit of formatting here, and we could probably change the alignment. Okay, I won't mess with that right now. This time is against me. Okay, so we'll say auto size true. Okay, now I can go right ahead and run this form. Click OK, and of course it will just show me my first record. I have no way of navigating to the next record. Any changes I make here would be sent right back to the table, to the underlying table, and saved immediately. And there would be no way for me to undo it unless I remember what was originally there and manually make the change myself. So let's go ahead and add some buttons on here to give us some navigational ability. So we'll go, and I click on the button from the Forms toolbar, and I'm going to click the button lock because I want to use this button several times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll just click on the arrow key here, turn that off. I'll highlight all of them, go to Form, Align Top Edges, and I can also say horizontal spacing make equal. Okay. And we're going to just change the name of these buttons. So BTN top. Sorry, previous. Okay. And then we can change the caption by going to the layout tab and change the caption to, so this is bottom. We want to use the words. Okay, and we could put next here to add a shortcut key or a hotkey. We use backslash and the greater than sign before any character that we want to be the hotkey. And so notice that there is a underline on the N. In VB, you of course would use the ampersand, but this is not VB. Okay, so this is Fox. All right, so we'll leave that there. Let's go and do the same for bottom as well. And previous. I'll make this top. Okay, so currently our buttons do nothing. They're just there. We've changed the caption, we've changed the name. To add code to the click event of the button, if we go into method, we'll see that there's several events here, and there's a click event. So we can double click on this to add code to the click event method. So if I double click, I get a window open in which I can type code that will be executed whenever I click the top button. Also, I could simply double click on any of the button because click is the default event. So I could double click, and of course it would take me to the same place. So what we want to do is that when you click the button, we want to jump to the first record in the table, and we also want to refresh the screen so these fields are refreshed with the data from the table. So to do that, and I'm not putting in any error checking right now, I actually want you to see the errors and how we would code around those. So we want to go top, and we're going to say this. Now this refers to the current form. So we're doing some object-oriented programming here now. So we say this form, and we say dot refresh. We want to call the refresh method on the form. The method is just is similar to a function, and we'll talk more about functions and procedures in another lesson. So just take it at face value for now if you're new to this. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and key these as you watch. So previous, we go skip -1, and let's say this form refresh. Okay. We had to use this form because I'm in the click event of the button control, and so this form, the form is only visible by using this form reference. There are other times when I'll be able to use simply this, and I kind of put my foot in my mouth there. I'm just going to leave that for now, and I'll explain more about that later. Okay, so next, skip. Again, remember there's no error checking in the code, so we will get some errors here. And for this one, we go bottom, this form, refresh, called the refresh method. And refresh knows what to do. Refresh will simply go to the table and update each of these fields based on the control source. So control source is mytable1.fname for this text box, and so when we refresh, it will read from the table and simply update the value property of this one, of this control, which is right here. Okay, so our form can do a little bit now. We have some code behind, so let's go ahead and run. And so once again, we're on the first record, James Cameron, and I can go next, 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 next. Okay. And then when I click next again, I get an error saying end of file encountered. I'm going to click ignore here. Okay, so right now I'm actually on the end of file. Notice all my text box are grayed out. You don't want this happening in your application. Okay, so what we need to do is to check every time we click next, are we at the end of the file yet? If not, then it's fine. We can go ahead and skip. If we're at the end of the file, then we want to tell the user that, hey, we're at the end of the file, you can't go any further, and basically ignore the next, or better yet, disable it until we click previous. Okay, so I can go back and keep going back, and the same thing will happen when I eventually get to the first record and I attempt to go beyond the first record. I get beginning of file encountered as opposed to end of file encountered. And we're going to ignore here the error. Top and bottom will never give an error because they do just that. Top goes to top, bottom goes to bottom. Okay, and so we close the form. And so we're just going to add a bit of error checking in here. So we say now, if not beginning of file, and we call the BOF function, then you may skip one record back, skip -1. Okay. If for some reason you get to, actually I'll put it here. So let's say we weren't at the beginning of the file, but after we did this skip, we got to the beginning of the file. We want to move the pointer back to the top of the file. So we'll say, after the skip, if BOF, another check, then go top. Okay, so we never move beyond the beginning of the file. And actually, we'll just put a little message here using a wait window, top of file reached. There are better methods or better ways of doing this, but just for simplicity's sake, we'll go with this way. Okay, and we say no wait, so don't wait for the user to press any key, just display the message and move on. Actually, that should happen after the fact. In fact, we could even beep. Oh, sorry. This is not VB. To beep, we just use print character 7, and that would beep. Comment here, beep. And once again, we refresh. And so I want to do the same for the next button. So I'll drop this down, and I'll go to the next button here, click event. And before we skip, if end of file, if not end of file, the exclamation sign is also equivalent to the not keyword, so I'll use exclamation here. So we say if not end of file, skip, and by default skip will skip one record, and then if end of file, then go bottom. We want to beep here as well. And we want to give a message. Note that in Fox we can use, and I did mention this earlier, we can use single quotes, double quotes, and even the square brackets. And so if I start with a single quote, of course I must match with an ending single quote, and oftentimes I put a double there and get an error. Okay, so single quote here, and no wait, and and of course we always call the refresh command. So that will make our navigation a little smoother. So that's not really error checking, as I stated. It's more a bit of extreme programming to ensure that we don't, fall off at the edge of the world. Okay, so let's run this again, and now I'll go to the bottom and then try to go beyond the bottom, and see now I get the message end of file reached, and then once I move a key or the mouse, then the message disappears. Okay, and notice that nothing happens, my data doesn't change. I can navigate back to the top, and then once I get to the top or try to go beyond the top, I get top of file reached. So I don't get that nasty pop-up with the cancel, ignore, suspend message in the form. Okay, and so we click here. Let's change the caption on our form. Go to layout, caption, and we'll call this data entry number 2. Okay, And I'm going to add one more button here. Actually, we're going to add several more buttons. Let's click this one, lock. So we need a button for new, edit, or save. We can do delete, and I want one down here for exit. Okay, so let's turn that off. Let's bring these guys over a little bit. Of course, for formatting, we could do something like this. I could add a little region around these guys just so they stand out a bit. Okay, so this now, I'm going to change the Z order of this by going to Format and say send this control to the back so the other guys show on top. Okay. Okay, so this is okay. So we got exit. I'll just tell the system to line it up, line up the bottom edges. Okay, so don't guess, and then I'll change the caption on this one to exit, and we'll make the X the hotkey. And also, we want exit to be selected if the user presses the escape key. So I'll go to other, and where I have cancel, I'll double click and set that to true. So it says specify if the command button is the cancel button. So by default, when we press escape on this form, this will be the button selected. Okay, and so this will change the caption to new, which now conflicts with the next. I'm going to change this one to T. That's new, and edit. And delete. Okay, so let's go ahead and code functionality for our exit button, which is probably the easiest. So we'll say release this form. That's one way we could do it. Or I could also said this form and call the form's release method. So either of these will work. Okay, so let's go with actually I prefer this method. So let's leave this one. To delete, let's go with this one. What we want to do is to pop up a message box to the user and ask if they are sure, and then if they are sure, then we will go ahead and delete. So you can use some defines in here. I can define ID yes is equal to 6, I believe, and actually that's all I need to check for, yes. And I can define ID message box yes no as 4, I believe, if my memory serves me right. And it doesn't matter. If it doesn't work, we'll just keep trying until we get it right. So what we want to do is to say to the user if ID yes is equal to message box, and I put the message in here, Are you sure? And okay, so here are the options. So now I don't have to guess anymore. 4 is indeed a yes, no, so I had that right. And so what we want to do is we want to say MB yes, no, plus we want a question mark there. Question mark is 64. Of course, I could have used a define up there as well. And actually, I want to put a warning, sort of. So we'll go with 48 for the warning dialog. Let's put it up here. It's neither warning 48. And then the caption is delete record. So if yes, then we delete the record. And what we want to do is because remember, when we delete a record, it's not physically removed from the table. It's simply flagged to be removed. And if we have the filter turned on, the record will be invisible. So what we want to do is to skip or to move off this deleted record. So we'll skip. And of course, we could possibly be on the last record, so we need to check that if we were on the last record and we did a skip, then we move to the end of file, and if so, then we need to go to the last record that's not deleted in the table. So we'll do a check here if not end of file, if end of file, then go bottom, and if and we'll only refresh if something was deleted. Okay, this looks partially right, but we'll debug if there are any errors in here. So Control Enter, and I close that. New and Edit sort of serve as dual purpose buttons, or actually we want them to serve as dual purpose buttons here. Like when I click on New, I want the caption of New to change to Save, and Edit should be changed to Cancel. And likewise, if I click on Edit, then New should go to Save, and when I click on Save, of course it should revert back to New. So I'm going to change the name of these guys to reflect that. So this is New Save, because it will do two things, and this is Edit Cancel. And let's go ahead and write the functionality for this. So we double click here, and what we say is if this. Now this is referring to the current object, which refers to the button. You can tell that we're in the code for the button New Save. So if its caption is equal to, and then we got to put all this stuff in there, is equal to New, then we want to switch mode. And then we'll change the caption to say this caption is equal to Save. And we also need to change the caption for the Edit button. See this, this form button. Where is the button? Edit Cancel caption property is equal to cancel. And it just occurred to me that I'm talking about properties and methods, and I've not really gone in depth. Now, let me just back up a little bit. Buttons and all the objects that we can add to a form are called controls, and they are essentially objects with events the properties and methods, and more appropriately PEM, which is PEM, property, events, and methods. Okay, and we can call these properties by specifying the name of the object. When we press a dot, IntelliSense, of course, will show us all the properties, methods, and events that are on the properties, and we can just set the values and see them change. In fact, if you go back to the interface lesson, you'll see a quick sort of a quick overview of how this was done to the Visual FoxPro screen itself, the Visual FoxPro environment, which itself is an object that can be referenced using the underscore screen object. So as I do that and press the dot, I get a list of events, properties, and methods that I can call on the object. Okay. This lessons, or these series of lessons, doesn't actually teach object-oriented programming. I would recommend that you do find some source that can do that, and then come back once you have a full grasp and see how we use objects in Visual FoxPro. Okay, so let's continue. We have we want to change the caption on the edit cancel, and then we want to open these fields. So what we're going to do by default, we're going to disable these buttons, these text boxes, and so we want to enable them when we click New or Edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method on this form, my own custom method, which I'll call to enable and disable the text boxes. What I do, I go to Form and see I can go New Property or New Method. So I'll just select New Method here, and I'll give it a name. And I'll call it Do Enabled or rather I should say Toggle Enabled. And I click Add and Close, and if I go to Methods now at the bottom, I should see, sorry, this is for the button. Let's click on the form, and at the bottom I will see my personal my method there that I just added. Okay, and so I'll double click on this, and I'm going to put some code in here, and just watch. Now that I'm in a method that directly belongs to the form, I don't have to say this form. I can simply say this. Okay, so it all depends on where I am. So because I'm on the form, this refers to the current object. Okay, so there's a little bit of object-oriented lessons for you. Okay, so end with, and I'll say with this .txt first name .enabled equal t value. So we're going to accept an argument to this function, and the argument will tell me whether to show or not. Let's call it t show, tl show. L for logical, T for parameter. So we'll call it tl show. So if it's true, actually tn enabled would be a better name. Okay, so if it's true, the control will be enabled. If not, they'll not be. So I'll just go ahead and do the same for the rest of them. I'm going to speed this up a bit, so just hang on a second. Okay, so there we are. Okay, so all my controls, the name, txbat, tx first name, last name, address, etc., right down to likes coffee, which is a checkbox. Notice the difference here. I use chk, etc. And I'm using the enabled property. When set to true, the text box is open and I can type in it. If it's false, of course, it's disabled and I cannot enter any values therein. Okay, so we'll close this, and I want to call that function. Let's go back to new. So if we click and the button is new, we're going to change it to save, and of course we're going to enable we're going to enable the text box control. So we'll say this form and toggle, call my function, and I want to call it with true. That is to enable the controls. Okay, and we want to set the cursor on the first name, so we'll say this form.txt first name, set focus. Okay, and let's do a bit of refreshing here. This form, refresh. Else, actually refresh, we can put down the bottom. We always want to refresh when this button is clicked. Okay, so we're going to do the opposite. For save, just make this simple. We just want to say I just want to put a message here. Wait, window record was saved. We're not doing any buffering, so in fact I really don't need to do anything to save a record. I'm going to come back to buffering in a segment on its own because it's a bit involved, and I don't want to rush it. So I'll just put a beep here. After a while, that beep can become annoying, so use with caution. Okay, so, and after that, we want to disable the controls after you've saved. So this form toggle, and we pass false, so it will disable the stuff, and that's that. I'm going to copy this out because the same thing needs to be done when we call the edit function. Sorry, when we click the edit button. So I'll do a test for that, and I just forgot something. Okay, so when we're edit, we need to change this caption to, okay, so this caption goes to cancel. Bear with me. Note that I'm working on the edit button, so things are a little different. And for here, what I want to change is the new save button, and change that to save. Okay, and so we click on save again, and something I forgot to do with the other guys, I forgot to change the captions back. So I'll copy these two lines, put them down here, and they should go back to edit, and they should go back to new. And I'll copy it back over to new save. So this would go back to new, and this will go back to edit. Okay. So again, there's no data buffering, so I really don't need to save any changes. Cancel, in fact, will not really work. I'm missing something here. Okay, let's think this through again. So if we click on the new button, we set okay, yeah. So this is right for the new. For the edit button, we need to make a little minor change. So when in edit mode, if we click edit, then the caption changes to cancel. So when we click cancel, we don't want to say a record was saved. We just want to say, sorry, we're unable to cancel, as no buffering is turned on. Okay, sorry, unable to cancel. Unable to cancel. In bracket, put revert. We can't undo the changes. Unable to undo as table buffering is not turned on. Okay, so it's not really a save as such because we're canceling here. So that looks better, and I think we are almost there. There's one more thing that we need to do, is that while you're editing, we don't want people navigating around, so we need to disable the navigation button, and even the exit button as well. So a good place to do that is in the same place where I do the toggle. So what I'll do is in here. This time I'll check the value of enabled. Oh, in fact, I don't. I'll just do the same for the buttons. So button top enabled equal TL enabled, and so forth. Of course, there are other ways of doing this. With the wizard, the navigational control that was dropped on the wizard form actually takes care of doing the enabling and disabling. Okay, so let's close that. One other thing I want to do is to, let me show you so you can see the value in me doing it. Let's run this. Actually, what we should do is to select all of these guys first and foremost and disable them. And I go to other, and enable is false. So notice that when we disable the form, it's really very gray. You can't see much. And what I tend to do sometimes, if I go this route, is to change the disabled fore color. Instead of gray, I make it black. I'll click black here, so at least stuff are readable. You still can't touch anything. Okay, so. Okay, this one still doesn't look very pretty, even as black. Nevertheless, let's proceed. So we go ahead and run. And so by default, everything I can't make changes to the data. I can always read. Of course, I can go next, previous. The stuff will work just the same. And okay, in the wizard, of course, it did not use the enabled property. It used the read-only property. And I may just go back and change that, because this way I'll at least be able to read this value. Let me just make the change for this one. Just so let's reset. And we won't use so enabled. We'll reset that as well. And we'll make it go to data and say read only is true. So we can't make any changes. It's read only. We'll go back to our method, the form method. We go down to toggle, and for this guy, we're going to change the read only property. So when we get, so we want to negate. Okay, it's a little bit confusing here, but we just need to negate this for the read only. So we'll say not enabled, and that should take care of that. Okay, let's try that again. So notice I'm getting the message down here. The control is read only. I still can't make any changes, but of course I can navigate and so forth. I can edit, and when I click edit, I've enabled the text boxes, and I use the set focus method of the text box to place the cursor on the first field, which is the first name. And of course I can go in and make changes. So if I change this guy's name to Bondi, if I cancel, it says sorry. Okay, cancel. Sorry, unable to undo as table buffering is not turned on. So in this mode, with no buffering on, any changes made to any fields in the table is immediately written to the table, and I cannot undo. Let's try the okay, there's a flaw in our code, because now our navigational button and our exit button is still not re-enabled when we exit. So enable. Okay, so we have that reversed. In fact, it should be the other way around. Okay, so Let's test the delete. Okay, so that looks right. Delete record. We did put that as the title bar. The 48, which is a warning code. Says, are you sure? And I'm going to say yes. And we deleted James, and what it did, it skipped past James' record. Okay, so let's exit, and let's fix the navigational buttons. So by default, these are on. So in the toggle code, I think I want to reverse these. So I'm going to put not, and that should fix that. Let's run that again. So when I go edit, cancel, okay, so the buttons come back. So, okay, I can change that. If I save, record was saved, of course, again, because no buffering is on, the change is made to the table immediately. And then I can scroll through. I want to see if James, okay, so James Bondi. We're still seeing this record. However, it is a deleted record, and I want to prove that to you. If I browse here, notice that there is a deleted mark here. And so what we can do in our form, and by the way, this form is not using a private data session. It is accessing the default data session. And cancel. Let's exit the form. So we're going to make a little bit of change. We'll go to the load event of a form. The load event is the first event that is fired when a form is created or when we run a form. So in here, I want to set up my my environment. So there's some standard things that we tend to do. That is my data environment. I set talk off. I don't want FoxPro repeating any commands. For example, if I were to say n equal 4, that would be no, that's not talk. That's echo. Anyway, I'll explain these in a minute. Set echo off, set deleted on, and this is the one when turned on will hide deleted records that is records that are marked for deletion will be hidden with set deleted on. I want to set exclusive off. Don't wish to use a table exclusively. I want to use it in the shared mode, and you want to do that typically for all your forms. And I want to set date to American, which is the /dd/YYY. I want to set century on so that I see 4-digit date as opposed to 2, and so that's fine. So talk, and I'll talk more about it later. We normally set talk off and echo off. Echoes for things like if I assign a variable, if I say x is equal to 1, Visual FoxPro has a tendency to echo back the value that was assigned to the variable, and that may appear on my screen. And so we tend to set echo off so we don't have things like that happening. And set talk off if I were doing calculations, for example, counting the number of records in the table. If I wanted to print some stats on my form, Visual FoxPro will then report 7 records counted, 5 records counted, and so forth. And we don't want that reporting on, so we can turn it off by saying set talk off. Of course, I explained set deleted already. Set exclusive is so that when we open a table, the table is in shared mode so that others on the network can use the table as well. And the set date American is to force the format to mm/dd/YYY. Century on says use 4-digit year. Okay. And okay. So when we run this, we should not see James Bondi anymore because now we've set the environment. And so James Cameron, if I go bottom, I see John Barnes. Okay, go. And as I scroll through, James Bondi is not visible. So likewise, if I delete James Cameron, he's still physically in the table, but he's just not visible because it was flagged as deleted. Okay, now is there anything I'm missing out that I've not yet shown you? So what I said I would do is I would come back to table buffering in another segment. Immediately after this, I'll create another video with this same table, but using buffering so that when we edit and we make changes to the table, I can then cancel and we'll have implemented one level undo. So any changes made to this record can be undone immediately, and we can then go on. Okay?